Okay, let's start out with just a little bit about the history. Anything that you know, and I can deb in some of the archived footage that you send over.
Poronui began by probably pretty much around a campfire, which is what we love to still enjoy with guests. It started as two gentlemen deciding that American guests love to come to New Zealand to fish, and we've got a beautiful fishery. We should really decided that New Zealand was the place to be, and we had a beautiful resource. We should make it happen. And so these two chaps got together. Simon Dickey was the man who started Poronui in the early to mid 80s, where he originally started with commercial boats on Lake Taupo, but was very keen on fly fishing, and he found a piece of property here on Poronui that he rented or leased the land with the river rights of two beautiful rivers, being the Taharua and the Mohaka River. And from there the business has grown. So it was a small lodge with 3 rooms, 3 guides. A lady called Eve Riley came in as the cook, and she then stayed on for 26 years as the lodge manager. There are great stories of hot tubs. One of the stories I love was a gentleman coming into the lodge and saying, Eve was an Irish woman, and he said, Eve, my bed was vibrating last night. And she said, oh, I won't be charging you for that. And that was really what the makeup of the lodge was. It was all pulled together to make it happen and have fun times. Eve was an amazing cook, so people came time and time again for the hospitality and the cooking and the guiding. And the guides, everybody was made to feel very much a family. And I've been here 24 years and 5 years without Eve, but really that is what I want to continue. And it's very easy because so many people are repeats, to just follow on and give genuine, authentic hospitality to people, whether it's on the river or in the lodge, on a horse or on a bike. People return because of our team. People come into the lodge knowing it's the same as it's been for nearly 30 years, and that they've got often the same people around them, or the same guides, the same staff each year, and the feel and the atmosphere has been the same for such a consistent period. They feel like it's coming home and it's a safe place for them to visit and stay.
Were there a lot of other lodges at the time up here?
No, maybe certainly around Lake Taupo there were small lodges, very small lodges that people would stay at, but nothing like what has become of Poronui. They're more so winter fisheries, so that we've got the beautiful Tongariro River on Lake Taupo, and that river, there have been small lodges around it, but more so for a winter fishery rather than a summer fishery. So Poronui is really now the only lodge on the North Island that in this part of the North Island that promotes both rainbow and brown trout. Yeah.
Now, I know that his vision was to have something kind of like this. Yes. That we're in the Sparry camp right now. What was the first step? Did he try this first and realize maybe we need something a little more structural?
Well, it pretty much what happened was it changed ownership. So he leased a piece of land on Poronui, had a cute little lodge on it. Then that piece of land was sold to a forestry company. It had been in a farming environment, sold to a forestry company, and after the forestry company it was for sale again, and actually a guest bought it, which was the best outcome. So one of our very dear guests, Mark Blake, bought the property, and he really grew from the little fishing lodge. He had a dream to extend it further up that property, so closer to the main road, although we're still 25 kilometres off the main road. And he had a vision of also the wine cellar, which we now have, which is an incredible cellar, and stables and all the other things that have become Poronui. He also built a beautiful holiday home, which we actually now changed ownership again, but that home has become a second lodge. So you're either staying in the fishing lodge where there are 7 cabins and different guest structure, or you can have the house where 4 couples or a beautiful family, multi-generational family, and that's another place to stay. Or we come back to the basics of a camp on the river with a fireplace under the stars. And for me, this is probably my favourite spot on the property, particularly with a little whiskey in hand and under the stars.
Yeah, it's pretty special. Yeah. You mentioned earlier about the sustainable fishing, which I thought was really unique because so many places I've been to, it's a daily, maybe every second day rotation.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you guys really put a lot of energy and emphasis on resting the pools for, in some cases, up to 2 weeks. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. That's all, that has been going on since the concept of Poronui, is that we need to protect our fishery for longevity and stewardship forever. It also is backed up by our current owner, the Westervelt Company, and their company ethos is also sustainability and looking after everything for the next generation. So whatever we do on Poronui, it has the same, what we're striving for is the same purpose. The great thing about Poronui, it's a big property and there are lots of things happening on the property that pull it together to be a great business. So whether it's the tourism or farming, forestry, a lot of biodiversity projects that we have, conservation on the property, they all pull together to look after each other and support each other. So we don't have to overfish our fishery. We manage it on the sensitivity of each of the rivers that we fish, whether they're a 5-day rest period, 7 or 14-day rest period, all to do with the sustainability, not just for us, not just for Poronui and its business, but for the whole guide industry in the Central North Island, all of our partners being helicopter companies, local iwi, Maori, Department of Conservation, all of the different entities in this region that we want to, and my children, your children, that we want to keep this fishery going for. So it's really important that we're the guardians of looking after it with our partners.
Yeah. Helicopter fishing is such an important part of the fishery here, or of the experience, I should say.
Yeah.
And being totally transparent, and I'll include this in the audio.
Yes.
I was really uneasy because I said to Charles, I personally, selfishly really want to go heli fishing.
Yes.
But how do I portray this to the public? I don't know if this is a great idea. And in being here, all of those worries have eased. And I know there'll be comments on this video about it. Let's talk a bit about it and just attack it by the horns. Why is heli fishing so important to this operation?
I think if you understand the Central North Island of where we are in New Zealand, the access that we use the helicopters for is not often accessed by anyone. It's just so remote. There's a lot of private land, a lot of Maori land that is inaccessible unless you use a helicopter. We work with local iwi and Maori to access the rights to fish on their land, to land helicopters, which benefits them and their trusts, and benefits them in looking after the fishery as well. And the helicopters are used purely for access. They're not stepping in front of anybody else as far as any other New Zealander that can access this area. If we don't use them, we don't get that far, because it's a huge block of land that you wouldn't normally be able to access. Yeah, there's no bike trail, there's no road, there's no bridges,
Public huts or anything?
Yeah, no public huts. It's remote wilderness, beautiful, pristine fisheries that we really want people to see and enjoy.
Yeah, I feel as at ease doing that here as I did in really remote places in British Columbia.
Yes.
On the history, are there any stories of old buildings or any particular points where the construction was done that you brought photos of?
Yeah, we've got the beautiful Red Hut, which is not far from here. The Red Hut is, if you go inside it, it's all inscripted with people's names and dates. The earliest date was 1926, and the hut was built for people to clear this part of the land, to clear land for farming, also for deer recovery and rabbit eradication for farming. It's been remodeled in ways, and not in the last 100 years for sure, but originally it may have had another room on it. My husband, when he was a junior guide, because it was actually quite close to the fishing lodge, it was where he had to stay. It had a wire wove bunk. He had to bathe in the river before going to dinner with the guests, but it was sort of the little cabin that they used if they needed an extra bed. We now use it. Our current owner, Cade, was married there, which is very special. Was married and used the Red Hut as this beautiful place. And for his wedding, we've had other small weddings have their photos there. We often do. It's the outpost of the back of the property where if you're fishing, riding, hiking, and the weather turns on you, it's the place to go, light fire, have a lovely lunch, and spend time. It's got a beautiful feel to it because so many people have passed through. Guests have now written their names, past staff write their names, so you go in there and you get just a really sensational feel of people have been before. Must say the best names are those written in the 1920s that have been carved, but with a hunting knife perhaps, and beautifully inscripted on the walls. We've also got a wonderful old sawmill up in the bush that there was a part of the property that is virgin beech forest, which is amazing, native birds. It's unreal that the plant life up in the trees and things. But it also has a sawmill up there that at one stage selectively milled. And the story told was it was two chaps in there that built this little sawmill, and they were selectively harvesting trees for high heel shoes. So you go up there now and there's lovely little railway tracks of where the sawmill was, and you just sort of think about them taking down large trees and making high heel shoes. It's great little story. We've got an amazing area on the property where there was a hermit who lived in the bush for 40 years, Punchy Wallace. He was a prize fighter, and then he decided he'd move away from society. He lived up in the bush. Every couple of weeks we would take him a big pot of stew, and when he finally passed away, which wasn't here, but we had a memorial service for him, and his ashes were put into shotgun pellets and shot out over the bush, which was where he chose to live for such a long time. And in the end, he complained about the neighbours. There were obviously no neighbours around. But lots of beautiful stories. This property has so much history. It's a real goal of mine to pull it all together in a book, dig into the archives, and there's just so much to tell. Different ownership, really interesting ownership. A Mormon group owned it, brought the first quarter horses to New Zealand. Those horses are throughout New Zealand now. One of the men, the main man of the Mormon group, his grandsons came last year to visit. Their grandfather had talked fondly of Poronui, and that was way before tourism, when it was farming and lots of that. The lovely thing about Poronui is really the management has not changed. The style of management has not changed since the beginning. It was all about hosting people, making them feel welcome, making sure the detail and everything was set so that people remember the detail. Just this morning I was in the lodge for breakfast and people were talking about the detail, and they haven't been here for 12 months, but that's what hosting people and looking after people is all about.
The fishing right now, so typically you hear people talk about the whole February, March, April this. And this early fishing, I know we've lucked out, but I don't know if I can go back after this. I mean, I will. I'll fish the entire season in New Zealand, but this is really special. Can we talk about why someone might or might not want to come for early season fishing?
I think often early season fishing's, in my mind, often the best fishing. The fish are coming out of the winter, they're hungry, they're in amazing condition, which you've seen. I've seen you holding that big fat flabby fish. The bugs are around at the moment, so we're with perhaps global warming, but the hatches are coming on earlier, that we're getting a lot more bugs in the water, so we're dry fly fishing a lot earlier. Dry fly fishing used to be just January. We can dry fly fish in late October now. The quality of the fishery is so good that it's producing great nursery fish as well as the big fish. We fish in the headwaters of most of our water, which is where the big fish lie. And the weather's, you've had great weather, but the weather at this time of the year is a little more predictable than it used to be. So the fish haven't seen anglers for a long time. We have a lot of, a big fishery here, and there are beats that you went to today. We're into our second month of fishing, the end of the second month of our season. Nobody's been there since last year, or last season.
It's been mind-blowing. I mean, I'll let the video speak for itself.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what else other people can do while they're here.
Okay. I think Poronui is a great place for people that also don't fish. So we get a lot of honeymooners, particularly who one of the spouses fishes and the other doesn't. So the other loves to horse ride, hike, bike, and then the cool thing is that they then have a great day out with cool people and then come together in the evening and talk about their experience on the property. There's a lot to do on Poronui, so it's a big property, but also a lot of great people who look after you for the day, whether it's hiking, biking, horse riding, honey tours, because we have the Manuka here and the honeybees, honey tastings, wine tastings, cooking classes. The cooking class might be down here at the camp by the fire. It might be up in the bush over hot rocks. It may be in the lodge or the Blake house, just depending on the makeup of your group and who wants to do it. The heli biking on the property or slightly off the property, we can heli hike or bike back onto the property from using the helicopters again. But what we often talk about Poronui is that the playground is actually at your back door. We're not travelling off to do anything. Everything's right here. We can spend days adventuring and not crossing your path with the horses or the biking. People also, we've got an international competitive Olympic standard sporting clays range. We have a lot of families that come, like you said, but where they break up and the kids stay with us, so they do cooking classes and some shooting, and parents go off and fly out for the day and fish. And then again, like I said, all come back for the family meal. Multi-generational property, grandparents, young kids. Yeah, we do lots of fun things like game estate bingo, treasure hunts where the kids turn up with nothing and they get to the end of the property, and then we've got dinosaurs and turkeys and pink butterflies and all sorts of fun things. So we just love to make it happen for the whole family, or for particularly couples and families travelling together. Yeah, we pretty much can do all sorts of things. And we do travel off the property to local sites as well. So Taupo is a great little shopping destination. Hawke's Bay is a great wine destination. Both short, not reasonably short drives or flights over. And we just have an amazing guide team that look after everybody, and lots of knowledge of New Zealand, lots of knowledge of things on the property, but also locally.
We didn't talk about the size of the property.
So Poronui is 16,000 acres. So we're in the central North Island. We're in a volcanic area. We've got the volcanoes not far away from us. We have a geography we have the two rivers, one down through the valley on the valley floor, and then the Mohaka River at the back of the property here. We have our soil type is very pumice, from a volcano that came through thousands of years ago. We have the virgin native beech forest. So this is about as far north as beech forest goes, and so we have a beautiful example of beech forest on the property. There's 1,000 acres of beech. We're also a working farm, so we farm red deer, we farm cattle and sheep throughout the property. We have a game estate area which is 3,000 acres, which you get lost in all the time. It's beautiful. It's one of my favourite places to be, and to take people to see everything that's in there, and just lots of wonderful experiences to do. The property has this big area at the back here, which is all Manuka. Many years ago, perhaps in the early 50s, this was a burnout area to create farmland, and Manuka is the fastest growing natural or native to grow back. And often if you look under it, there's lots of native trees coming in up under the Manuka. But Manuka in itself is an amazing plant. It produces the Manuka honey. This is our white Christmas, so it's just starting to pop at the moment. But in another couple of weeks, this will be our Christmas white, beautiful Manuka flower.